Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining. We will begin shortly.
Good evening, everyone. I'm audible? You are. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sakshi Mittal, coordinator of the second NLUO PHFI Public Health Moot Court. Just I'm really sorry for disturbance. So I welcome you all to the valedictory ceremony of the second annual PHFI Public Health on National Moot Court Competition 2022. I thank, on behalf of the Center for Public Health Law, I thank the judges and the participants for joining in. And for the participants, it has been a 3-day long grilling all rounds, and I hope that they had an enriching experience. Now, without any further ado, we'll start with the valedictory session. I now welcome Professor Dr. Yogesh Pratap Singh for the welcome address. So.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Very good evening to all the participants, all the panel members. Professor Srinath Reddy, President, Public Health Foundation of India. All the respected judges who judged the final round of the second NLUO PHFI Moot Court competition on public health law. All the members of the Center for Public Health Law and all the participants of this Moot Court competition, a very good evening to all the people. The COVID crisis forced all of us to take public health in a more serious fashion. The Center for Public Health Law at National Law University, Odisha, was also established during this period with this intention to provide a deeper understanding of the use of law and policy to improve public health. There is hardly any public health challenge today that can be resolved without the assistance of legal or policy solution. However, if law is to be an effective tool for public health, then it must be framed on an evidence base derived from public health law research. Public health laws, the principles upon which they are established, they are founded, and the legal framework of public health practice need to be understood by a professional audience, including the public health policymakers, legislators, public health practitioners, and public health lawyers working in this area. The purpose of organizing this moot court competition was to make the students of law aware of this very niche area, and later to create a pool of talent who can take public health related issues forward. We requested Public Health Foundation of India, the Union Against Tuberculosis, and we entered into MOU with these two prominent institutions working in the field of public health. And we started working towards this goal. The last year's Moot proposition, the first edition of NLUO PHFI Moot proposition was based on the vaccination issue. But this year we thought that we will emphasize more on, because this is one of the important sustainable development goal which has been fixed to reduce the consumption of tobacco. And that's why this year's Moot proposition focused on the issues related to the rules, regulations of cigarettes and ban on e-cigarettes to protect the right to public health, and whether it can override the right to trade and commerce of the tobacco industries, whether classification between cigarettes and e-cigarettes for the purposes of ban is arbitrary or irrational. Can a person claim compensation from the state for permitting the sale of cigarettes and other tobacco products, and by tobacco from the tobacco companies on account of harm which is caused due to the use of these tobacco products? So some of these issues were covered, and I witnessed the final rounds, which was judged by very prominent judges, lawyers, practitioners from the field of public health. I saw Mr. Anand Grover grilling all the counsels from the side of the petitioner, from the side of the respondent, Mr. Ranjit Singh, Srinidhi, Mr. Anupam. So it was indeed a very learning exercise, and I was thrilled by seeing the participants of the final round, the way they answered all these questions asked by these experts, judges of the final round. And this is the purpose of this moot court competition, so that we can sensitize these budding lawyers towards these public health related issues. So thank you very much. I welcome Professor Dr. Srinath Reddy for guiding us, for helping us, for supporting NLUO Odisha Center for Public Health Law to organize this second edition of NLUO PHFI National Moot Court Competition. This is probably the only moot court competition happening in the area of public health law in the country. So thank you very much, sir, for blessing National Law University Odisha and for guiding with this. We'll continue with your blessings. We'll continue this exercise in years to come. I welcome all the judges. Mr. Anand Grover, I heard that he had some urgent work, so he had to leave. But I welcome all the judges who judged the final round to this valedictory function. Vice Chancellor, Madam, is also, it seems he is busy somewhere, but he may join in some times. He is not taking the call. So I welcome all the participants of this function, this competition. I welcome all the members of the Center for Public Health Law, National Law University Odisha. Thank you very much. It was indeed a great exercise done by the center. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yogesh sir, for your welcome address. I'm sure it was an insightful experience for both the participants and the judges. I now welcome Ms. Rishika Khare, Assistant Professor of Law, National University Odisha, and Co-Director of Center for Public Health Law, to speak about the report of the second NLUO PHFI National Moot Court Competition. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Sakshi. Good evening, everybody. Good evening to Professor Reddy, President PHFI, Yogesh sir, Registrar and Director of our Center for Public Health Law. So this was the second edition of National Law University Odisha and PHFI, Public Health Foundation of India, Public Health Law National Moot Court Competition. And the idea of this moot court competition was to ensure wide range participation throughout the country and sensitization of students in the new area of public health law. And I think with the second edition, we've been able to do that successfully. So the competition started from 7th July 2022, running up to today, 10th July. We saw the registration of 30 teams, and out of which almost 26 teams had participated in the oral rounds. The seventh was the inaugural session with which the competition started, and we had advocate Warren Burke participating in the inaugural and the vice chancellor declaring the competition open. Then on the 8th, we witnessed three different rounds of preliminary sessions in which each team argued from one side, which was a knockout round. And after the knockout round, 13 teams qualified for the octafinals. Octafinals happened yesterday, that is 9th, in two different sets. After the octafinals, we had the semi-finals for which four teams had qualified, and the semi-finals were conducted on 10th morning, that is today, leading to two teams reaching the finals. And throughout, we have seen some very good arguments coming forward on the issue and some very grave concerns being highlighted by the councils and students, and it shows the sensitization that has already kind of developed in the students. So when we had put forward this Moot proposition, we were not sure of what response we would get from the students, from the younger generation, especially because the issue was of tobacco, and we saw a rising use of tobacco in the young generation already. So we were not very sure, but we saw an overwhelming response. And the Moot proposition, after being released, it was kind of an opportune moment for us, because just after a few days, a PIL was also filed in the Supreme Court of India, also stating the similar data that we had presented in the Moot proposition from the WHO reports, and also seeking the ban of tobacco sale near schools, religious institutions, and hospitals, and also seeking to increase the age of tobacco consumption from 18 to 21. So that is still pending. So during that happening, we had this parallel Moot court competition. So I'm sure students will get an insight into the case as well. And for judging all the rounds, we had judges from the fields of academia, associates and partners and senior associates of law firms, practicing advocates, and some of the sitting judges. Throughout, we have seen some very healthy competition that has come out. And then congratulations to all the participants who participated and argued and researched so well. All the best for the results. Over to you, Sakshi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your inputs. And now call upon our guest of honor, Professor K. Srinath Reddy. Professor Reddy is the President, Public Health of Foundation of India, and formerly headed the Department of Cardiology at All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Under his leadership, PHFI has established 5 Indian Institutes of Public Health in different regions of India to advance multidisciplinary public health education, research, health technology, and implementation support for strengthening health systems. He was appointed the first Bernard non-visiting professor of cardiovascular health at the Harvard School of Public Health in 2009 to 13, and presently serves as an adjunct professor of epidemiology at Harvard. He holds advisory positions in several national and international bodies, and recently published a book, Make Health in India, Reaching a Billion Plus. He is the first Indian to be elected to the National Academy of Medicine, USA, and was awarded several prestigious international and national doctorates and fellowships. He is also a Padma Bhushan awardee and served as a physician to 2 Prime Ministers of India. Amrava Center for Public Health Law and National University Orissa, we are obliged and honored to have you with us, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Professor Yogesh Pratap Singh, esteemed faculty and student leadership of the National Law University of Odisha, distinguished panel of judges who have had the privilege of listening to young advocates in the making debate on one of the most important public health challenges, as well as the participants of the debating competition. It's a pleasure to be part of this event and to congratulate the prize winners, but equally importantly, to congratulate all who participated with a great deal of enthusiasm and displayed a great deal of learning in the contest. From what Professor Singh has said and what the description has been given of the actual process that has been followed in this particular second edition of the public health related moot court competition. It was a very intensely debated area with a great deal of learning that was brought forth by the young student advocates in order to bolster their case. I believe that tobacco control is a very important area of public health legislation. Indeed, it was the very first public health treaty that was brought forth under the auspices of the World Health Organization in 2003, the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. I had the privilege of being part of the Indian delegation which negotiated that particular treaty, and indeed, having been the only common delegate in the 6 rounds of international negotiations for India, I also became the principal spokesperson in the later rounds for India, for Southeast Asia, and a number of developing countries. So the need for a public health treaty of that kind, which later on also coincided or catalyzed national legislation, is a very important landmark in public health history. And that particular need was very clearly recognized even in India. And by 2003, in April, India adopted the PHFI, which is the Indian legislation of tobacco control, even a month ahead of the World Health Assembly adopting the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. Clearly, one of the reasons why public health has been invoked in order to bring about tobacco control globally and in India is because tobacco is not only one of the major causes of death and disability, causing 25 plus diseases and causing a huge loss of life, but it is also one of the most advertised addictions and marketed maladies in which the industry plays an extremely strong role in promoting a very unhealthy product. The industry has suppressed even internal evidence of the harm that tobacco causes and has consistently tried to subvert any attempts at regulation and control. And therefore, the law has to become a very potent instrument. When we talk about behavior change and then talk about choice that individuals exercise, that it's essentially an infringement of personal freedom in order to impose a legislation on their choices of whether they will smoke or not, one must recognize that nicotine is one of the most addictive substances known, and particularly a young consumer is much more likely to be entrapped when enticed into this addictive habit. And it's very difficult to get rid of. And therefore, without adequate information, if tobacco consumption is portrayed in a congenial manner, aggressive marketing, and promoted quite often in a very unethical manner by the industry, you do require a very strong legislation. Of course, one of the major reasons why the tobacco control legislation came into being, or at least it gained impetus, was the harm caused by second-hand smoking or passive smoking, in which even people who are not actively smoking were greatly harmed by the products of tobacco smoke. And that constituted one of the triggers for outrage against the tobacco industry, especially when it was revealed through industry documents that they were suppressing internal evidence of harm. So we know that clearly we do require public health legislation in order to support a great deal of public health action. And indeed, law gives an entitlement which people can assert to protect their own rights. A non-smoker earlier did not have the right to protest against somebody blowing tobacco smoke in their vicinity and virtually into their lungs, whereas the legislation gave them the entitlement to be protected against tobacco smoke from somebody else. That involuntary smoking that they were forced to experience, the law protected them. And there are many other areas where the law has come in order to curb the menace of tobacco. Now, as far as e-cigarettes and vaping are concerned, India has taken a very progressive step by preventing the entry of e-cigarettes into India. This matter has been debated extensively. It has even divided the public health community globally, because some people, particularly from the cancer control community, believe that the absence of carcinogens in the e-cigarettes is a good thing and it probably will reduce the harm. But the claim that it is a bridge to cessation has been blown apart. It's been very clearly shown that actually it perpetuates the tobacco dependence because of the nicotine dependence. But the harm caused by nicotine itself, both addictive, but also a number of other health effects in terms of vascular damage, in terms of effects on the growing brain. All of these have been very clearly demonstrated in very many ways, and now we're seeing evidence coming up even recently of extensive lung damage occurring in young smokers who take to vaping. So there are many areas of harm that are revealed, and I think India was right in preventing one more harmful tobacco product being introduced under the false premise that it is actually less dangerous than smoked cigarettes. Tobacco in any form, consumed in any form, active or passive, is injurious to health, and therefore it's a public health objective in order to prevent that harm. But certainly, I believe that law cannot be a blunt instrument. Law should be framed and utilized only when essentially needed for serving an important public purpose. And secondly, they should also be implemented with a considerable amount of political will and administrative skill. Otherwise, a law that only rests in the statutes and is not properly implemented actually brings the judicial stature and the legislative strength into disrepute, and people will start ignoring any other laws. So laws should be made with all seriousness and enforced with considerable amount of commitment. And that is where we can really advance public health legislation in order to serve the broader public interest, whether it is tobacco control or whether it is environmental legislation. All of these are going to be important areas in the future where we will see a number of harmful substances inimical to public health being brought in, particularly because of commercial determinants of health, and we will have to protect public interest in very many ways, while ensuring that fundamentally the law is not abusive in nature or coercive to the extent of violating individual liberties ad libitum. So this is where the fine balance of the judicial mind comes in, where public interest outweighs individual choices and liberties. And that is where I believe the cases would have been fought and argued. And now we're awaiting the results of the price distribution. I have said my piece because I have a particular stand on this, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot have different opinions. As young lawyers should exercise your own thoughts. But ultimately, it is very important for law and public health to become key allies and ensure that public interest is served first and foremost, wherever necessary, with suitable regulatory instruments, with legislative backing. And that is an important element of future public health strategies as well. And I'm glad that the National Law University of Odisha has taken this lead and is positioning public health very prominently in the entire legal spectrum and is preparing young legal minds to think of public health as an important area for advancement through legal and legislative processes. And this particular second edition, I'm sure, will be the forerunner of many more productive exercises where we will see public health law issues being debated vigorously. But my own appeal at the end of it is that debates should be lively, but ultimately the commitment to public health as the prime area of focus should not be divided. We should all commit ourselves together to promote public health using law to its maximum advantage with as much judicious application of mind as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. As Yogesh sir had mentioned that we have had 5 judges for the final rounds, Mr. Anand Grover, Advocate Ranjit Singh, Dr. V. Srinidhi, Mr. Anupam Sinha, Mr. Biplab Lenin. Out of these 5 judges for the valedictory, we have been joined by Advocate Ranjit Singh and Mr. Biplab Lenin. Advocate Ranjit Singh has been a consultant and has been an advisor to the Ministry of Health and Welfare, Government of India, and to the National Institute for Cancer Prevention and Research. And Mr. Biplav Lenin is currently a partner at Cyril Amarchand and Mangaldas. I request Advocate Ranjit Singh and Mr. Biplav Lenin, who have witnessed the final rounds and the arguments, if they would like to share their opinion with us regarding the competition.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, please.
So thank you, Dr. Yogesh, and thank you, National Law School Odisha, for conducting this particular presentation. I am actually honored to be part of the judges panel with eminent people in the panelist, as a panelist. So I practice pharmaceutical and healthcare law for last 7 years. I'm an engineer by profession, and then I did my law, and I'm also a registered patent agent. And I was earlier practicing intellectual property, but for last 7 years, I have been focusing on pharmaceutical and healthcare and life science related matters. Though I focus more on the corporate side, I do assist them on the transaction, I assist them on the advisory, and I assist them on the dispute part of it. But I felt that the topic was of a concern and that needs to be debated. Though there is a specific law which has come into play, and though there are certain standard which is currently in force, but I felt both the petitioners and the respondent, they argued well in the matter. And it was well debated. The individuals are very confident. So I wish them all the best. And I thank the law school for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Advocate Ranjit Singh is here. Sir, are you here with us?
Ranjit ji.
Yes, I'm here.
He's here.
So I think it was a very good, well organized event, and I have, in fact, I did speak to these participants also, and they did present their cases very well, along with the rebuttals. And the best part was that, we as judges focus more on getting answers from them, rather than focusing a lot on their facts or case laws as such. And they were very well prepared, and they kind of give very spontaneous replies. So overall, it was a very good this thing, and I hope they take it further. And it's personally, this is a very topic very close to me. We've been working on it for a long time, and there were, considering we have been part of certain challenges that came out, and we could give you certain anecdotes on that, but keeping that aside for some later date, I think it was a very good, very planned, well-planned event. And thank you for keeping it, and best of luck for the participants.
Thank you, sir. So I think we can move to the most awaited moment. We can move to the declaration of results now.
Yes, yes.
So I think I'll take over from here. Sakshi, I'll just inform everybody of the octafinals, semi-finals, and the
Please go
finalists,
ahead.
and then sir can take over for declaration. So as I mentioned, the preliminary rounds were the knockout rounds, and we had 13 teams who had proceeded to octafinals, and then 4 further proceeded to semi-finals. So the remaining octafinalists were ILS Law College, Pune, Symbiosis Law School, Hyderabad, RGNUL, Patiala, Lloyd School of Law, MNLU, Aurangabad, VES College of Law, Mumbai, School of Legal Studies, Cochin University of Science and Technology, University School of Law and Legal Studies, GGSIPU, Nalsar, Hyderabad. These 8 teams were the octafinalists, and the 4 teams that had proceeded to the semi-finals were Government Law College, Mumbai, School of Law, Christ University, Delhi, Tamil Nadu National Law University, and School of Law, Christ University, Bangalore. Out of these 4, the 2 teams that went up to the finals were Tamil Nadu National Law University and School of Law, Christ University, Bangalore.
Thank you, Rishika ma'am, for elucidating the octafinalists, semi-finalists, and finalists. We would like to take an opportunity to congratulate all the teams that went into all these rounds. Now I would like to call upon Professor Yogesh Pratap Singh to declare the results of the Best Memorial and Best Speaker. Over to you, sir.
Okay. The best memorial prize goes to Team 416, Rajiv Gandhi National University of Law, Patiala. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Should I declare the best speaker also?
Yes, sir, please go ahead.
Okay, the best speaker prize goes to Mr. Saurav Bharadwaj, respondent speaker to Team 412 VES College of Law, Mumbai. Congratulations.
Congratulations, teams. Now I'd like to call upon Professor Reddy to declare the results of, to declare the citations of winner and runners-up team. Over to you, sir. All the
Thank you very much.
participants, sorry to interrupt, sir. All the participants who have also won the citations till now, they are free to open their cameras as well. Over to you, sir. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem at all. Thank you. As the prizes were being announced for the best memorial and the best speaker, it was very clear that both of them were not from the 2 final teams, which shows that there is a lot of individual talent, but ultimately it's the teamwork that matters most.
Yes.
And therefore, in this contest, I'm very happy to announce the runners-up position in the 2nd edition of the Moot Court competition on public health law goes to the National Law University, Tamil Nadu. Congratulations.
Congratulations, team.
Congratulations.
And the proud winner of this year's contest is the School of Law, Christ, deemed to be University, Bangalore. Hearty congratulations.
Congratulations.
Many congratulations.
Hearty congratulations to the winning teams and to all the other finalists, and indeed to all the teams that have participated, because once you've committed yourself to the cause of public health and advancing law for serving a very important social objective, everybody is a winner. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Professor Reddy, for declaring the results. If the esteemed guests don't mind, we would like to take a formal screenshot of the ceremony. The winning teams.
Participants and the judges, everybody can turn on their camera.
Yes, ma'am, for sure. Please, it's a request to the teams as well to open their cameras.
And Nandita as well, please.
Yes.
Nandita is here? Oh,
Yes,
hi.
sir.
Good to see you.
Sir. Yes, sir.
All right, we've taken the picture.
Thank you to everyone for joining in. Thank you to Professor Yogesh Pratap Singh and Professor Reddy for joining us for the valedictory ceremony. And once again, congratulations teams for such a good performance. And I'm sure you learned something. And I would also like to thank Ms. Rishika Khare and Ms. Nayata Batra, our faculty advisors for the center. And thank you for joining in.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Namaste.
sir. Thank you, Professor Reddy. Thank you for joining.